Today we're talking about a soccer club that your kid is definitely not in. Small roster, specialized coaches, kids graduating into top academies by the age of 13. This isn't some fantasy, it's real. It's called Manhattan Kickers.
Our guest today is Evan Rosenthal, president of Manhattan Kickers FC. Evan co-founded the club in 2001, has been running it for 25 years since. A former high school captain who played at Washington University before injury ended his career. Evan stepped away from the corporate world and rebuilt Kickers around one idea: development is the product. And this isn't theory. Kickers has been an early stop for players who have gone on to MLS academies like NYC FC and Red Bull, and have also enjoyed success at the first team level, both in the U.S. and in Europe. Alumni include names like Matt Miazga, Luca Colaiesho, Johnny Shore, and Julian Hall, amongst many others. This is a club worth studying.
Absolutely fascinating case study. Most important is you didn't say anything about my new background, which is ironically to our listeners and viewers, I ended up traveling thousands of miles, spent thousands of dollars to see my son play in England in a tournament. So I guess I did not learn anything from this podcast.
Well, I don't know about that. If you're going to travel and pay thousands of dollars for a tournament, you might as well face Man U, Liverpool, and Man City's academies. I think it's a pretty good deal.
I hate when you put a positive spin on everything. This is Chasing the Game, Youth Soccer in America. Let's get started.
Evan, welcome to Chasing the Game. And on the record, this is the closest I've ever been to Manhattan Kickers. So I feel like I'm stepping up in the game here. Look, Manhattan Kicker it's got this mystique in New York. You might not know it or pretend not to know it, which is fine. Parents talk about it. That's where all the cool kids go play soccer. The one you will want to be a part of. Yeah, well, you know, when this is something kids aspire to get to before everyone gets familiar with the academy system and all that. So let's go. I mean, does this mystique create pressure on you?
Well, first, thanks for having me. I've listened to the shows like I've mentioned, and I think what you guys are doing is great. I think the youth soccer world, there's a lot of sort of confusion and frustration and things that aren't clear. So I think any effort to, educate people is great. So I'm glad to take part of it and, give you, my point of view from my experience, what I've been doing over the past, 25 years.
Can you just say that we didn't make you say that? So
well, and unlike Laurent, I have been close just on the other sideline, which looked like our teams were in a bit of a rondo for 80 minutes each go around. So it's much better being on the opposite side of a camera than it is on the sideline.
Yeah, it's true. So back to the question. I mean, there's a mystique around this club. You've built something special, almost a myth. Is this something you're aware of? Is it something that is difficult to live up to year after year?
When you're on the inside of the club, I hear, praise from different people, but we're just trying to work hard and do the small things and coach soccer, create a good experience for the kids, for the coaches. So yeah, things go well. We hear praise, but it's not something we focus on. It's just still youth soccer. It's just such, like we were talking about before, it's just such a small corner of everything. So it's fun to sort of be into it at the level that we are and enjoy what we do. And I say we, I mean our coaches. But yeah, it's just sort of a day by day thing.
You know that it's not industry standard to say good things about the club you play in or the club you left. This is why I'm saying this is not a usual jargon. It's pretty extraordinary, everything you hear about this club I was never a part of or invited to, but that's true.
We're open, we're a small club, so it's easier for us to hold standards. It's U6 through U12. We have one team in each age group. We don't carry a big roster. All the teams, pretty much our main trainings, we're back to back. We do the younger kids and the older kids. And we have a coaching staff that pretty much knows every kid in the whole club. So our U12 coach knows all the younger kids. Our younger team coach, they'll stay after and help. So it's sort of we make it very small. So we're able to really focus on the details. And we have a lot of coaches who love what they do and are into it, that we go over the details and we try not to let things slip through the cracks. And because we're small, I think as a director, I think it's hard to even keep the standards up in this small club. I can't imagine a bigger club, but I think that the size of our club helps us focus on quality.
Can you talk a bit about how you started it? What was the philosophy? Where did you see the white space in the market 25 years ago as you got into the youth soccer world?
So how it happened was I was working at a corporate job after I graduated college, and I had played in college, nothing great in terms of my playing career. I got injured, and I didn't think I'd be doing soccer. And my brother was coaching in the city at the time, my older brother, and he started coaching there was a community recreation club that still exists called the Manhattan Kickers Soccer Club. And he, with another parent, a guy named Jim Gilliam, who was really helpful in the start of everything, decided to take it into a more serious direction. And at that point, I took a team, my brother took a team, my brother was a director, and that's how the club grew for the first 10 years. And the idea, there was no grand plan, but it was just to do a really good job and to really be intense and to, have higher standards. Like, go back to those early times. A small example is like we had training gear. The kids wore training gear, and people were like, "Oh, these guys are taken too seriously. Why would they wear the same shirts in practice?" The kids can wear their replica jerseys, but now it's pretty standard. So there are things like that we took seriously, and were able to do something nice with soccer that wasn't being done by other clubs. Both my brother and I grew up in Cleveland playing club soccer, and we loved our experience. And I think that part of it, made us want to have offer that experience as coaches to the next kids. And we really liked the club soccer part of it and being part of a good program.
This is superficial, but when I'm looking around, and obviously these clubs have to exist, it's tuition, it's a business. Many of these clubs we're seeing now are actually extending the length of time kids stay within a club. They'll go all the way to U16, 17, 18. We just see them grow in multiple layers of team. You stop at U12. That is not a usual thing for a club at that level. Is that a conscious decision? Why was that decision made?
Well, it evolved over the years. At one point, we went to U14, but like I was saying, we have one team in each age group, and a lot of our kids are the top maybe quarter or depending on the group, move to the MLS clubs. And we've sort of supported that over the years. And so by the time they get to that age and move, it doesn't really make sense to continue having a team if you lose those level of players. And that we're not going to bring in players from elsewhere. It changes the whole dynamic of the team. And then the other big thing is it small-sided to 11-sided, and the facilities needed and that stuff. And then I think that the main reason after all that, even if we had the fields and the kids stayed with us, is that we've gotten good at this. We have a good sort of knowledge base of what we do. So we sort of just try to keep making it better and not try to expand. And I think that's been a strength of the club. Is a lot of clubs, the coaches will want to move up into the older ages. So they lose that knowledge from the younger ages, and they have somebody who maybe doesn't have a lot of experience. But I've been doing this for 25 years. The main coach, Admir, who works with me, he was a player. He's been doing this his whole life, basically. We have that knowledge, and we're able to just help the other coaches, and it gives us a huge advantage, which I think is not common in the U.S. as much, to have coaches working a long time in these ages.
When you decided, you and your brother, and then I guess with Jim's help at the beginning as well, started to think about building this from a development methodology perspective, what did you guys look at and say, we want to be this and we definitely don't want to be that?
It's tough. I think things have evolved over the years. I think the way we maybe played 20 years ago is different than the way we play now. And I think the club has gone through different kind of like eras. The way I think of it is where I've been here the whole time, but different coaches have come in and have had their influence. For a while we had a coach named Boris Bozic, who was a Serbian coach who went on to run the success academies, but he sort of had a little bit of influence there. And then we had a coach, Hector Nunez, who was a Catalan and who coached at Barcelona, and he had his influence there. And I think that the club adapted a little bit to there. And now it's, with me is Admir, the coach who I mentioned, who grew up in the club, and we have our own way now. So I think it's changed over the years. I think style wise, it's changed, but we've always, the one thing that have stuck with us is futsal. We play it intensely in the winter, and that's sort of influenced our style overall. You know, where we value decision making is the key thing with us. The kids have to be with smart players. Of course, we like skillful players. We like to keep the ball. We pass. We like intelligent players is our goal. That's the style we want to play.
It is beautiful football to watch. There's a certain level of commitment that comes with being a kicker player and a kicker family. What does that look like?
Yeah, it's a big commitment, I feel, for these kids this age. But the commitment is more for the parents than the kids, because we train 4 times a week, and for like a U7, that's not a lot. It's, you know, it's a few hours. It's like, but for the parent in New York City, getting to the field, the commuting, it's a lot. It's a lot. So it's a commitment. It's not for everybody to train 4 times a week, hour and a half trainings. So it sort of self-selects in a way. We don't have that many kids that try out for our club. It is a commitment, but you know, it obviously you're training 4 times a week at that age. It pays off.
What's the barrier when you say you don't have a lot of kids trying out for the club? What do you think the barrier is?
Well, we don't recruit kids. We don't advertise. We'll advertise like we have a summer camp that we do, and that's sort of separate from our club, but we're not trying to get kids. They come to us, and we sort of make it a little bit like not so easy that we set the dynamic early in that if you want to come, you come try out, come this date, you know, that's the first thing. We're not getting on calls with parents and having long conversations before they come.
Do you find it's a hard sell for parents to understand the U12 cutoff?
I don't know. I think it depends on the age. Like if it's a younger kid, like let's say a U7, I don't even think they're looking that far down the road. That's so far down that maybe they're not looking that far. And the benefit, what we have for us is that we've been doing this for a long time, and there's been so many success stories that we're able to use those examples as how it works out well. So I think people buy into what we do because we've proven that it can work out well at the end for whatever their goal is.
So let's try to break it down a little bit. Like, what is really a Manhattan Kickers kid? We had an interview with our last interview was with a Dutch coach who coaches U12s and is also a scout at their second division professional team. And he talked about this idea of looking for young kids that have motor skills, this concept of motor skills. You were saying something more about the IQ of soccer, even at a young age. What is it that you're looking for at that young age when someone comes to Kickers?
We don't have the luxury to like pick kids like a coach at a big club would have. You know, like when I speak to the coaches at big clubs, they're actually choosing amongst a large group of top players from smaller clubs. We just take the kids who come and try out for us. So it's not like we have a big choice. We look for potential in the kid. Obviously, physically, it depends what age, but it's more is their motivation, I would say, is the biggest part of it. But as they get older, like a motivated 6-year-old is great. If he could come, he wants to be there the whole hour and a half, he's focused. We're all excited to get a kid like that, but it's kind of rare. But then as they get older, they have to be able to keep up with the group. So like a U10 would have to have a significant amount of experience and still be motivated and have all the tools to jump right in.
But on a U10, that's a great, you just brought up, like, would that be a cognitive thing that you see, okay, there's a certain thing that says to me this is a Manhattan Kickers kid, or is motivation really trumps everything else?
I feel like when we'll get excited about a kid is he's really skilled, has good ideas, knows the game, isn't losing the ball all the time, isn't making bad decisions, and has sort of an extra sort of edge. But again, there's all types of kids that we'd be happy to get. It's like there'd be kids who just, he'd be great for the team. And then sometimes a kid will come and we feel that he has huge potential. And it's all different. It's hard to say because there's all the different age groups and each case is so individual. But we all know within 5 minutes if the kid that tries out will work
in
out.
5 minutes.
Evan, there are thousands of youth soccer clubs in this country. Very, very, very few collectively play the way each one of your age groups plays. Why can't more clubs do this? And given what you just said around player selection, you're not cherry picking these kids and the most talented or the biggest or the fastest or whatever it is. You're truly developing them. So what's the special sauce?
Yeah, it's nothing too crazy. I feel the same way as you when we go abroad and we play in an international tournament. And all these teams have all these quality players. Yet when we're here, we go to a tournament and we don't see, could go to a tournament and not see any good, high quality players.
Compared to you guys, I've seen what you've done in every tournament. And everyone knows there's a Manhattan Kickers team in that tournament.
But
Lavi, we're packing up. We're leaving early.
I think what I mentioned before is that we focus on these age groups, and we know what we're doing with these age groups. Like when we've gone to the Mediterranean International Cup, and when you go there, all the kids stay in the same hotel, and we've been with Olympic Lyon for a couple of times, and they have the same guys every year, like me. It's the same guys who stay with this age group. And they're able to bring some institutional knowledge to these age groups. It's not just a young guy working with them. And the same club, Lyon, is one of our coaches played there. And when we went on a trip to France and we played at the club, and the guys he's in his 30s now, and the guys that coached him were still there. And so I think that part of U.S. soccer is missing. There are guys who stay in the youth game and are able to really do a good job and understand it, but it's rare. Most clubs throw young coaches at it who don't have the experience to really get the most out of the kids.
Yeah.
I want to pivot a little bit to something Matt and I call the handoff, because it's so unique for your club, because you're developing such high quality players at a very young age. And maybe a stat of how many of them make it to MLS Next teams in the area, or there's so many paths in New York City. Is this something that's also part of your coach training, is kind of how to hand off a kid somewhere else? Is this a process that you go through, and what happens if a kid doesn't make it to an established path in the area?
Yeah, well, it's individualized again. It's not, I sort of work with each family to figure out what's best with them based on the level of the player, and where they live is an important factor as well. It might not be feasible to play for the best possible team if it's, an hour and a half commute. Because we pull kids from sort of, if you took Pier 40 as our center, all around. So into Brooklyn, Queens, New Jersey. So let's say if we have a kid from New Jersey, he's not going to go into Brooklyn or Queens to play. So it's a lot of it is, geography. And then we have maybe a select group of kids who the MLS clubs are interested in, and they've already made it clear. And so that's simple. And we also have a relationship with Med Oval, which you guys are familiar with. And
Sure.
They sort of will take all of our kids, not necessarily on their first team, but they all have a place there to play. Even if a kid is, below the level, they'll find a place for him.
Okay,
And
so people don't know they're also in MLS Next. Their top team is MLS Next. So that you're saying that.
So a lot of our kids go there, but then, it's not convenient for everybody to go there. So if there's a kid that lives, let's say he lives in Westchester, I'll reach out to New York Soccer Club and say, hey, there's a kid that's graduating from our program, and I think it'll be a good fit. And all the clubs are always happy to hear. We have a good relationship with clubs because we don't fight for players, or we don't have a bad relationship with any club, really. So it's nice. And we don't have any of that conflict that I hear about with the older ages of taking players, and we're not really involved in.
How have you seen the landscape both locally and nationally change? So you mentioned Med Oval. I mean, it was Med Oval, it was Gotchi, it was Manhattan Soccer Club. What if I'm forgetting any of the big ones aside from NYCFC and Red Bull? And now there are probably double that amount of clubs that are MLS Next clubs in the tri-state area. Is this double the amount of opportunity, or does this actually saturate quality?
Yeah, it's watered everything down. I think when they first started to organize the leagues with the development academy, when they had a few clubs, the level was much higher for those clubs, obviously. And now I feel that all the clubs in the MLS Next, the overall play has watered down, because I see it with kids. They don't want to, if they feel they're going to start for this other team, they're going to go there instead of being a bench player for another team. In the past, they would have had to be a bench player for that team, and so would have other kids, and it made those teams stronger. So I think it's pretty clear that the MLS Next has been watered down. It's the same kids, That's the years. I've been doing this for so long. The leagues are always changing. But
Yeah.
it's the same kids. It's the same amount of good players. It's just repositioning the kids. It's not going to create, just because they create more teams in the league, it's not going to create players of that level. So it's hard for me to say.
But you do know, in the younger ages, part of the unfortunate things that probably have changed in the last few years is almost the addiction to, and we've had a couple of guests here talk about this addiction to tournaments and this winning mentality. I know how important competition and winning is to many of my young colleague parents when the kids were growing.
Yeah, well, winning is really important to us. I feel it's important, I think, for players to be a part of a winning culture and to expect to win and to have that mentality when they play. That's important, but it isn't the most important thing for us. The competitions are sort of a way of developing the players. They have to learn how to play soccer. The soccer is a game, it's a competitive game, so they have to learn that. But we're not going to win at all costs. We're not trying to, just win games. We're not trying to load teams so that they can win and play ugly, and it's not our goal exclusively to do that. We don't play in that many competitions also. We play in pretty much one tournament in the fall, a couple of futsal tournaments, and even those, we try to win. Like, our coaches want to win, but they also have to play the kids fairly. They have to play the kids on the bench. There's things that they have to do that are going to make it hard to win, but it's a tough thing to manage. That.
Well, and a lot of your teams used to play up a year as well. So I would argue that if winning was the most important, and by the way, I think those teams often won when they were playing up a year, but the point is, the goal isn't to win 8-0 every match. Yeah.
Exactly. And we'll put our teams in situations that are difficult, and, we'll put the players in situations that aren't always geared towards winning. But then there's some, like when we go on the international trips and we're playing in a tournament that you have to win your group to go on and play the better teams, then it's sort of, we let everyone know ahead of time that the coach is trying to win this game. We want to go far, play the better teams, and the playing time is going to be exclusively what the coach feels is going to try to win that game. So I think we get to be really competitive there. And there was a player that came through our club, and he on this subject, I feel this is a good sort of story to tell. He won the NCAA championships with Clemson. His name's Colin Johnson. He just retired. He's in the USL. If he ever hears this, I'm not embarrassing him, but he wrote me an email after they won. He was at Clemson and won the NCAA championship, about how the kickers impacted his life, and it showed him what it is to be involved in a winning culture, and how important that was. And then since then that's what he's wanted to do with soccer. That's what he's enjoyed about it, and that's what's motivated him. And he talked about how special it was. He was on the team that I coached early on, that we won tournaments and we'd go on trips and win things, and how that made the enjoyment of the game that much more. So, it's a hard thing to balance, the winning, or, a lot of it comes down to playing time is what sort of prevents sort of the team from really winning, making sure all the kids they get to experience the games. But it's a hard balance. But
how do you handle that in such this is not a cheap experience to be part of.
Yeah, it's in our club, playing time is earned. I feel that there's a no-win situation in the playing time. Like, if you go down to the coaches who are doing it, it's a no-win situation. If you decided to say, hey, everybody's playing equally, it's not fair to the kids who are working twice as hard to play the same as the kids who are maybe missing practice and not working hard. It's just not fair. It's not, they're not earning it. So we feel it needs to be earned. The kids need to show up in practice, listen to the coach, work hard, and then they can earn their playing time. So if a kid's doing all of that, a player's doing all of that, they'll play. They'll usually succeed if they're doing that. But if a player is not ready to contribute to the team, who hasn't been focusing in practice, the coach doesn't need to play him. And we try to communicate all of this up front so that there are no surprises. And it's sort of expected in our club. People know what they're getting into with that.
Yeah, what I love about this is that these are ultimately life lessons. right? I mean, winning is actually really important, but doing it in a way that aligns to the mission is most important, right? And it's the same thing with earning playing time. Well, that may be really difficult for a U9 player to hear or a U9 parent to hear. The reality is that either that kid is going to show up to training and work that much harder to get the place, or the kid will eventually maybe fall off or find another club or whatever it is. But I think that these are, while difficult at times, they're good lessons to learn. And I think that's probably what builds the community that is kickers well beyond when they leave as U12 players.
Yeah, I think the families who come to our club want that environment. They want their child to earn what they get. And I feel it works out. But, there's always issues with...
Of course.
And that coach it's hard for a coach to manage it. I don't know how much coaching experience you guys have, but the
sideline coaching, incredible amount of experience. What do you mean?
The time in the game.
You need advice right here.
As a coach, it's the time, you have to have a watch. You have to be looking because time doesn't play by the same rules when you're coaching. So it's hard. It's a hard thing to manage the playing time. And it usually takes, with our club, 2 coaches on the sideline to make sure that we're fair.
2 coaches on this. So how many coaches are in a training session per kid? Let's say, how many kids do you have in a training session?
Our typical training will have at least 2 coaches with the team.
And what's the size of a team per age group? You said 1 team.
10, 12 kids.
12 kids?
Well, remember, Laurent, they're playing, they get up the most is 9v9.
Yep. So we have small teams. Usually a lot of times we have more than 2 coaches out there. So our practices go back to back. So the coaches from the first training stay for the second, and the coaches for the second oftentimes come to the first. We have coaches sometimes that just come for a day a week just to help out. My feeling as a director is that I want to have a lot of coaches around. I want everybody to feel supported and having a good time with it. If the coaches are motivated and enjoying it, then they're going to do a good job. If I don't want them to feel isolated, so I put a lot of effort into making sure we have a good, player to coach ratio.
In the interview again with the Dutch Academy coach, from starting at U12, they have 5 coaches per team. So obviously, I guess you're on to the key to success, which allowed you to create such incredible talents, which we're going to pivot to. We couldn't do this episode without talking about your number 1 export into the professional world, Timothy Chalamet. And so I'd like to focus on that a little bit. And
Laurent has seen Marty Supreme 7 times.
Yeah, absolutely. Safdie brothers. Yeah, but all right, we won't talk about him. But we can talk a little bit about what do you see when you have a 9-year-old Johnny Shore in your team or Julian Hull. Like, you got to see something, right? There's got to be something that's different.
Honestly, with Jonathan, we saw it when he was, 4 years old.
Let's talk. Tell us.
Yeah, he from the first practice he came to, he just had a different focus, different understanding. It was something else. He was the most advanced youth player that I've ever seen.
Yeah, did he have moments where that slowed down and others were catching him, or was his path fairly linear? Or
it changed once he left us at NYCFC. Things, I didn't monitor as closely. But when he was with us, he was so far advanced. He could play 3 years up. Tommy played 4 years up.
3 years up.
Yeah.
I mean, so that's really the window.
No problem doing that. And yeah, he was great. And he also comes from a really supportive family who could have gone the other way with a player that good. They could have been arrogant and wanting to take him everywhere to play. And they just trusted our system, and his dad was even volunteer, was on the board of our club, but was really involved. And everything sort of went well with them. They handled having a player like that really well. So it was a great experience having him in the club in general. Just setting the tone for the rest of the club, both the player and the parents.
We had maybe you know him. It was the previous director for NYCFC Youth Academy, Morton Gunn, and he said he coined the word rockets, and he said when you see that rocket, you that's the rocket. And is this what it felt like to have someone like Julian or Johnny on your teams?
Yeah, it's exciting. You want to do everything you can for them. You know that there's real potential. Like another example with Jonathan, we took a U12 team to Spain, and we asked him and his dad if he could come with the team. He wasn't at that point where he could play with that group, but just to experience it, just to come on the turn, sit on the bench with the guys, do the trainings, just soak in being in Barcelona and the environment. So, we're trying to do everything we can to make sure that his experience goes well and that he can sort of soak in as much as possible.
Wouldn't it be amazing if the U.S. had a compensation system where a small development club could benefit from this? Wait, should I have not said that? I don't know.
But with players, you don't always, obviously, I feel it's pretty obvious if a kid has potential, but there's a lot of other factors that go into it and how their parents approach it, and that could take them off the path. But
explain that. In what sense?
Like if they're not sort of dedicated in the right way, if they're focused on the wrong things, if they want to post Instagram videos of the kid dribbling through cones, or if they want to focus on the team, that's a big one. Now I feel can throw kids off what the sport is, because soccer is a team sport, and if you're a really good player, you still need to focus on the team. That's where you learn everything. It's all about playing for the team. So I feel that gets a lot of good players off track, is that it becomes about them and they lose focus of what the sport is about.
And you've seen that firsthand with talent in your club?
Yes. Or just like a parent who feels like, okay, that my kid's exceptional, it's because of me, and I'm going to dictate what he should do. Even though that parent might have never played soccer, this might be their first time through the youth system, they're still don't trust what the coaches are saying, and I see things go off in that direction as well. Whereas like a player like Jonathan, or like Julian's another one, his parents, or Luca Kolyosho, who's one of our top players to come through, they came to us because they wanted help with a kid who's showing a lot of promise in soccer, and we helped them. It's not us that made the player. We just didn't mess it up. We just tried to do the right thing with them and guide them in the right directions, give them the right experience, the right coaching, so that they can, reach close to their potential.
So even for Luca, you saw very early on Rocket.
Luca was, Rocket would be a good way to describe him, because he was so fast. Yeah, he's playing in for Paris FC in the French League One. Yeah, he's moved around a little bit. He hasn't really settled in, but he was an amazing player. He was just watching him run. I remember being at fields where there'd be a baseball game next to us on a field, and they'd be watching him, like pointing at him because how fast he was. It was so obvious to anybody how fast he was and how aggressive and intense. So it was pretty obvious with him.
Just a question on the U.S. system, and then comparing it to Europe. So I would imagine that parents continue to consult with you even as their kids move on, because of the experience they had at Kickers. And even though you don't have as strong of opinions on the older age groups because you're not living that every day, what are those conversations like with some of the elite players who are in the U.S. still at 16, 17 years old, playing for MLS, either academies, or they've moved on to the first team, that think about or have thought about, or even if it's younger, even if it's at 14, if they have the opportunity to go overseas, what do the conversations look like? And are people really hell-bent on trying to get over there if they can?
I still keep in touch with a lot of families. They like to use me as a resource to get sort of unbiased, information. And
by the way, which is what I'm going to do from this point on. I just want to establish that. So you guys can laugh all you want, but you'll see.
They know that I have the same goal as them, is the best interest of the player. So they'll ask me, but every situation's different. I think there's a lot of frustration with the players that are here. That is what, even if they're doing really well at the top of the heap, I feel there's a lot of frustration with the system in the U.S.
And that's from a a soccer perspective, development perspective, that's from a lack of competition,
Yeah, I think
the inability to call their own shots and move on where they want to move on, or all of the above?
The structure here is difficult. It's not structured that well to have. From my vantage point, again, I'm not in that world enough, but it doesn't seem like there's one, we go abroad and we see other countries, they have more higher level opportunities for kids to play at like the 16 to 18 level. Where here, it seems like there's like a couple missing links into where they could be playing. Like an example with Luca, one time we were over in Spain when he was playing in the U19 Copa del Rey final when he was 17. And it was televised in Spain and we watched it. And I was thinking the same thing for a 17-year-old. It doesn't exist in the US to have a high level game like that as a 17-year-old. They were playing Real Madrid in the finals at a stadium, and that sort of level, at that point, realizing that it's just, if you're a really high performing 17-year-old, maybe they push them into the MLS Next. There's really no equivalent for that. It's competition. Yeah. So it's, I feel that is like a gap in the US system that seems to, limit the players.
But even for the stars, right? Like if you think about you talk about Julian or Jonathan Shore, like inside our circuit, obviously these are Rockets, amazing stories, but in a way, it doesn't kind of perforate outside of a very close circle of people who know who those kids are. It's not like the MLS or whoever is behind all this has made the extra effort to turn them into household names or big stars. Maybe just that's where the gap is. So if my son grows up 12, 13, yeah, he knows a little bit about them, but it's not like he's flooded with these pictures of celebrities or local soccer celebrities and kind of that world.
Because they're not, because they're in the US and no soccer player is really a star. And because that they haven't really made it yet, even though they're sort of at the top of their age group, they haven't made it yet. And globally, there's lots of kids like them. If you take Julian and Jonathan, who are, the examples we're using, Red Bull and NYCFC, because they're kids who I know, if you went to every club has kids like them in Europe. All the top clubs have players like them who are playing on their first team. And so they still have a long way to go. And I think that's what the difficult part is here, is how to get them to the next step.
I think so too. I mean, we had Luis Robles on one of our first interviews and we talked about that, but even how do you give these kids at a 17 a chance on the first team and then ultimately promote them? Because you want kids who are 6 or 7 to not only be focused on the stars who are playing in Europe, but are close to them, right? Yeah. Like we all had it with sports when we were growing up, and well, you and I did, Evan, with other sports in this country. Laurent was growing up in Israel, so it was different. But I didn't have a soccer player to look up to in this country my entire childhood, right? And that made a huge impact on where I spent a lot of my time playing sports.
Yeah, that benefits the kids in our club because, most of the people don't know Jonathan Shore, but all the kids in our club know him.
Yeah, for sure. No, it's very true.
And he comes to the trainings and he meets them and they go to his games and maybe he'll say hi to them afterwards. So we have a mini sort of environment like that.
Yeah,
Julian's brother is in our club, so he's around as well. And Luca, when we used to go to Spain, he lived there, would, come to all the games. And so we still have that environment, going back to, Alex Mule, who was like one of the first professionals out of our club, or Matt Miazga. They'd come back and, Jonathan got to meet them and it was exciting for them. So we have a bit of that, which does help the kids. It motivates them a lot. I think that's a special part of our club.
Yeah, for sure.
That happens.
Can I ask just a question off topic slightly from where we are now, but from a coaching perspective? When I've watched your teams play before, it seems very systematic as far as how they play, right? How you build, where the ball moves, who's checking into space, who receives it, how they turn, where the ball goes. And I'm not saying they're not making individual decisions. They obviously are. What's the line between really well coached and players who are developing versus overcoached players where they're not necessarily able to make those decisions on their own if they're in a different system?
Yeah, well, our system changes with each team depending on the ability of the team. So we have a basic style of play and a formation that we use, but we're not that strict about it because the team has to be able to do it, but I don't know. I hear people say the overcoaching thing, and I don't know if I feel that's the case. We've played against Ajax, Barcelona, and they play really structured at these young ages. It's not just taking turns dribbling the ball. So the people who say, oh, the kids should just go and make mistakes and dribble, I don't see where that works. Maybe it's worked somewhere. Every culture has their own way of doing it, but I don't think it works for us. And I think, Ajax and Barcelona have pretty good results. And you watch their teams play, they're not just taking turns dribbling the ball. It's very structured. But again, the level to do it is based on the level of the players also. And we, of course, love players that dribble, but they have to know when to do it, and they've got to earn the right to do it. So it's not like we're saying we're just like a two-touch team. We don't play that way, but we do have a way of playing, of building the ball out of the back and of what areas we're creating the mismatches. And we have a style both in futsal and outdoor, like a framework, but the coaches, if their team fits it, it's helpful for them to do it because it works. But if the team doesn't exactly fit, then we can adapt it.
So back to coaches, because obviously you have such high level coaches which are known in the whole area. But so as those kids kind of grow out of your system and they go win U17 championships and move around, these coaches stay at all the way to U12 and that's it. I mean, how do you maintain that structure? Is it not enticing for these coaches to say, well, I want to go move and win a U17 championship?
Yeah, some do, but the core of the coaches we have now are guys who played in the club, who I've known since they were little kids. They love the environment, and they're here for now. This is what they want to do. Maybe one day they'll go do something else, but they enjoy these ages, and just it's the same with me. It's I've had different early on coaching, worked with older kids. We had a men's team for a little bit of our coaches that I coached in futsal in the TST tournament, but the youth level is a lot of fun for me. I think a high level U12 game is an exciting game. I feel when it stretches out on the 11-a-side, the kids get older. For me, it's not as fun. When you have a good youth team, the kids are going 100%. It's full effort. I think that's what sucks the parents into it and gets them so emotional, is because the kids are trying so hard. They're giving it everything out there, and it's fun to watch. It's fun to be a part of it. It's enjoyable, these age groups. So I think the coaches have fun with it. It's hard for us to find the right coaches. It is hard. We have a lot of guys who come that don't get our culture, and it wouldn't work out. So yeah, they have to align with how the club's culture. And for the guys who've been in it, it's so easy. It's like so much is unsaid. They just know this stuff. But it's definitely harder for coaches who come from another club. There's a lot of differences that we have that make it a little bit challenging for them. Whereas a coach who maybe just finished playing and is easier because they don't have those habits from a previous club. But it's the most easiest for guys who've played for us.
Evan, I may know the answer to this. Just listening to you talk about how controlling the quality is so important, and yet you find it can even be difficult with a smallish club like Manhattan Kickers. Have you thought about doing Manhattan Kickers in Brooklyn, in Queens, in New Jersey, whatever it may be, same U7 to U12, develop the coaches within the Kickers program in Manhattan and then place them? Or is that of no interest to you whatsoever?
That idea has been brought to me many times.
Yeah, I figured.
In different forms, but I don't know. It's hard enough to do what we do. From the outside to you, because we have consistently good teams, it might look like, oh, these guys have it just running, but like we don't feel that way. We feel like our kids aren't doing that well. They could be doing a lot better. It could go to pieces if we don't work hard. So we don't see it as like just assume that our teams are going to be good. It's not how we see it at all. Like if we at our coaches meeting, if you heard us talking about the things we need to improve on, you would think the teams, you wouldn't think the teams are very good, because we don't focus on the positives that much.
No, but that's the standard. That's how you create a standard of excellence, though.
Yeah, they're
right?
young kids. They all are not that good, but they all need a ton of work. So
Also spoken like a true New Yorker. I know you're from Cleveland, though. But speaking of New York, for those who are listening that are not from here, obviously the crippling cost of raising kids in New York, existing here, and I can't even imagine what it'd be like to run a youth club. Manhattan Kickers is, I would say, it's not a cheap club. How do you structure that? Because Matt and I talk about funnel, because you're a non-for-profit, right? Yeah. So is it on scale? Do you allow scholarships? How does the structure work?
Yeah, well, we're in a kind of a good situation, because being in Manhattan, we have a lot of parents who are well off, and we have fundraisers, and we have our dues, which don't even cover all of our expenses. And so we have fundraisers, and we have scholarship players. It's the way we look at it. If a player tries out and the coach wants him on the team, whether he's the best player or number 10, we take him. And then if the family can't pay the dues, then we figure out the scholarship. So we have, sometimes it doesn't matter the level with it. Like, he has to make the team, but once he's on the team, then we will figure the fight. We've never turned away a player for money. No kid has ever not played with us for funds, but it's easier for us because we can do fundraising. We even on our international trips, we just went to Brazil, and 3 kids didn't pay anything, and had a free trip. And we have probably 20% of our club doesn't pay, is on scholarship, and that just happens to be, each team is different. But
I mean, it's extraordinary, but maybe what many don't realize is that in your fundraisers, much of the support you get are already from parents, and correct me if I'm wrong, parents that are not in the club anymore, right? Parents of, yeah.
Some of it, yeah. So, we'll have a fundraiser event, and former players, parents come. And I think also I feel commit to the kids. And so I feel parents are more likely to support the program when they feel we're committing to the kids, where it's not year by year, like, oh, he's got to try out from U9 to U10. We'll see if he's going to make it. We commit to the kids. Maybe one or two kids every year at the end of the season, we have to tell them, listen, this is not good for them. It's not the right fit. It's probably best for them to find a different club, because we feel like we're not the right club. So that's very rare, but usually the kids stay throughout. And I think that helps with the support of the club as well. So
but can you walk that back a little bit? That's actually something I didn't realize. I don't know, Matt, if you knew that or not. But so if you have one team per age group, and very few drop, and they go through the program. So as the kids get older, it's harder and harder to get into Manhattan Kickers.
Well, it depends on the team. If a team is really good, yeah, we have some teams that are strong that are really hard to make. We're turning away good players, but we have some teams that aren't as good, and it would be easier to make. It just depends on the team, the age group. Our teams are consistently good. They're at the top level of the area. They can play with whatever teams, but within our club, we have a big variance in the level of teams. We have some teams that are way outperforming other teams. So it just depends on the kids that have come. But yeah, it does get generally more difficult.
Do you make micro adjustments, or is it just for a kid to come in to replace another kid has got to be a major difference between them?
He wouldn't replace another kid, though. We wouldn't pull a kid out. Yeah, we don't. It is really rare to cut kids. It's really rare. And again, all of our players aren't of a high quality MLS club caliber. We have a lot of players who probably wouldn't make the next team, but we've committed to them, and we want to get the most out of them, and we want to give them a good experience as well.
We had on a couple of sports psychologists a few weeks ago, had written a book called Mentality Wins. And we talked about the pressure on kids being so intense, especially when you're playing in some of these large clubs where they have 2 or 3 teams per age group. Kids are moving, kids are getting cut each year. right? They start in the first team, they move to the second team, they move to the third team. They may be out completely or not because their money is their money and the club needs it. And we just talked about the strain on kids at a young age and how that impacts development. And then, of course, on the families. And while your kids are obviously pressing and working really, really hard to develop, I think that feeling, that certainty maybe of knowing that they're not having to worry about that, they can just focus on developing, it's probably something that's really special for them
Unheard
too.
of.
Yeah, it's not something that I don't think any of the kids are scared of. They're more scared of like, am I going to play alike? I'm not going to get as much playing. That's pressure for sure on them, you know, and I think it's strong and it's a thing that is normal in sports too. But I don't think any kid's worried about not making the team next year. And when we do have a kid who we have to tell the parents they should find a different place, it's a process. It's like maybe midway through the season, we're like, listen, things are not, we don't think this is a good place for him. We don't think we're getting to him. He probably should be at a place where there's less pressure, but we'll see how things go. But we'll talk maybe with a month left of the season if it's worth trying out for other. So it's like a step by step, and the kid doesn't really know about it as much. It's more of a communication with the parent. And then we say it's probably worth trying out for another team. Again, but this is like maybe 2 kids each year out of, 70 that happens to.
Evan, there seems to be a trend where there's an anti-club movement in some places around youth soccer where there's a few people out there that are more famous than others. We don't have to mention them by name, who really believe that clubs are doing a disservice to kids in development. And that's a broad stroke comment, right? That doesn't mean all clubs. And I'm sure you see them, I'm sure you've heard of them, and these kids are doing a ton of work with cones, a lot of isolated type of work. I'm sure they do team stuff, but not necessarily within a team. What's the problem with that? Or what do you think? Or are there some advantages to it too?
I feel that's taken on a life of its own, these types of training. And it's ultimately, it hasn't had a good impact. I feel that talking about like guys who are doing individual cone training, posting it on Instagram, businesses about focusing on that part of it.
Yep.
Yeah. I again, like I was saying before, I feel soccer is a team game and you have to be really motivated. You have to motivate yourself within your team, and having guys coaching like that, I don't think the influence is that big or that helpful what they do. And I just see so much of it gone. Like a kid will see, one of the coaches will see on Instagram that a coach is working with him doing step overs, and the kid can't even pass with his weak foot. And they're just stuff like that at all different levels is happening. And I feel that parents get sucked into it. They look at it almost like if it's like math or something, and you can't do his math, so you get a tutor and they'll fix it. But the tutor sometimes, and I've talked to the guys who do, there's guys who are considered top trainers who've never even seen the kid in a game. There's a disconnect from what's really happening. And I think kids now are training harder than they've ever trained and more than they've ever trained. And I don't think they're any better than the kids were who never did this. It's a team game. You have to be able to like sacrifice and fight for the team. And those kids who have that mentality are the kids who succeed and who focus on the team. If you're playing for 4 different teams and you have a trainer who's telling you one thing, I think the core of the game gets lost. And those aren't the kids who are going to, take a ball to the face in the wall and on a cold weather slide in to block a shot. And those traits, which are so important to soccer, that commitment that's not the focus when you're doing, cone dribbling.
Do you explain that to parents, or is
I try, because it's tough, because it's like with youth soccer, I feel in general, there's always like a kernel of truth to things, and then it's taken the wrong way. Like it is a good thing if, let's say, you can't kick it with your weak foot, to go work on that. And if the parent doesn't feel comfortable kicking with the weak foot with their kid, to have somebody do it, it's that there's positives to fix certain issues of your game that could help you over. So it's not all bad,
Sure.
but it's taken on its own sort of purpose. And there are kids now who train more with a coach than they do with a team. And I feel that part of it's lost its purpose of just fixing something to help them in the games, and it's become its own thing.
Yeah,
So
I feel like there's definitely diminishing returns on that, and maybe as soccer matures here, this phenomenon might slowly die out. So
there's a coach in Brazil who I've worked with, and one year he comes in town every few years to work with us in futsal, and one of the coaches mentioned a skills practice to him, and he didn't even know what we meant by that.
This is a Brazilian. Yeah.
We had to explain it to him. This was here, so maybe things have changed there. But he was like, just to work on these. Yeah, it just wasn't part of what they do there, to this just focus on, what coach teaching a skill to a kid like that. And I don't think that's how creative players are made.
if a kid needs, let's say, wanted to do extra work, would you in Manhattan Kickers direct him to what that kid needs to do? Would you give him? Yeah.
That's the idea. That would be the idea. So we have a coach who does that, and he knows the kids. He knows what we need. He does a sort of a well-rounded system, and and that's great. It complements what we're doing. And there's certain coaches who, and it helps for the kids' confidence. Like I'm saying, there are benefits to it. But if it just becomes a focus of what the player does, it's missing the point of it's a team sport. You need to be motivated within the team. So yeah, there's definitely coaches and benefits to that.
Evan, a question: when you go overseas, are people across Europe or in Brazil, when you're just in Brazil, are they still surprised? These are a bunch of American kids playing at the quality and the level they're playing, or are we done? Are we through them being surprised at this point?
Well, when we have a good team and we do well, they're sort of surprised. Yeah, they don't expect much. But sometimes we can have a team that's good here and go abroad, and we're not. We're nothing compared to these other teams. The U.S. soccer is still pretty far behind the other major countries.
Matt, I promised Evan we're going to keep him for an hour.
Okay.
And it's been an hour and 10 minutes. He's not going to come back for season 3 if we continue like this. But I will say, after this interview, I'm probably going to get a lot of calls. People would assume that Evan and I are very good friends. And they're going to say, maybe you can have this kid. Maybe you can give Evan a call. So let's say a U9 kid, a parent wants to try out for Kickers. What would you say is the thing that a parent should say, you know what, maybe you are the right kid for Kickers?
He would just have to come and see if they're up for the schedule. They can get to their fields. They'd have to just come and try out and see how they do. If the family's committed to soccer, if the kid loves playing, if he's the kind of kid, the typical thing that I get in the emails is, oh, he's kicking the ball all around our apartment. We can't stop him with the ball. Yeah, it's the kind of kid that would fit into our program.
Evan, this was incredible.
We
really appreciate your time, and you saying anytime means it will be anytime, because there's still a lot to explore. And I'll just tell you, I know you don't see it from the outside because you're not with the older kids, but there's always the kids from Manhattan Kickers, from all the academy world I've seen, and the kids who play. Everyone always knows that this is a Manhattan Kicker kid.
Yeah, all the time.
It never goes away. It's this, right? It's this thing like, oh, look at that. Oh, Jackson, wait a minute. He's got Manhattan Kickers.
It's
okay,
Kickers kid,
Manhattan Kickers. Yeah, so.
Nice. That's good to hear.
Yeah, you're definitely doing it. And I like Matt's idea about Manhattan Kickers, Cleveland.
Well, I knew I was not the first one to bring this up. So, Evan, thanks again for joining us.
Of course. I enjoyed it.
Wow. This is the sound of me being crushed that my son has never gotten to experience this club.
Yeah, I feel the same way. And if you're trying to take something practical from this episode, here's the headline. Development isn't about volume. It's about the environment. It's about the coaches, and it's about the methodology.
Yeah, I mean, Evan said it in a way that defines the club, and I'm going to try to quote it. We're a small club, so it's easier for us to hold standards. We have one team in each group, and we don't carry a big roster.
Yeah, and the standard shows up in the pathway, too. Yeah. This is a quote from Evan. A lot of our kids are the top maybe quarter, depending on the group, who move on to the MLS clubs. And we've supported that over the years and have had great success.
Yeah, and then there's that line that should make every parent sit back for a second, including the two of us. Kids are now training harder than they've ever trained and more than they've ever trained. And I don't think that they're any better than the kids who trained before them.
Yeah, this is the tension. If the structure isn't right, the coaching isn't right, more training doesn't fix that.
Yeah, and I don't want to make this sound like a real estate podcast where we're telling people to move to Manhattan because that's not realistic. But the point really is to just start asking better questions about your kid's environment and demanding more.
I heard we were going to have free grocery stores though. So,
oh my God, there is one in the West Village opening.
I did hear about that. Roster size, coach to player ratio, standards, pathway. It all matters.
Yeah. And as usual, if this episode helped you see youth soccer more clearly, subscribe, share it with another soccer parent or a coach that you trust. Let us know what you're seeing in your own club. This is what makes us tick.
This is Chasing the Game, youth soccer in America. See you later, Laurent.